We've been speaking for a few weeks now about Roman Reigns wanting a match with Matt Riddle and Matt Riddle wanting to make that happen as well. Randy Orton indeed pushing for that too, and the match looked set for Money in the Bank. However, I was not able to sit here and confirm the match was going to happen, and here we are getting news from Dave Meltzer and the Wrestling Observer that the match is not going to happen. We, however, have more information than that. We are going to talk about the current plans for the WWE and Universal Championships, who's going to win each one, and when, as the plans sit at current. So we're going to talk the entire Roman Reigns schedule and the entire Roman Reigns plan that we're going to jump into right now here on Spoiler Warning. Hello everyone, my name is Tom Collihew. I'm a pro wrestling journalist who's broken such news as the Ronda Rousey return, the Becky Lynch return, Seth Rollins taking on Cody Rhodes at WrestleMania, and so many more. I recently did a check-in and did a little list of places that I've been featured, including all of your big wrestling sites, but also including tabloids here in the UK, such as The Mirror, The Sun, places like Comic Book, Bleeding Cool, and even a bit of New York Times. So I've been all over the shop, in case you didn't know who I am. And yes, Austin, I do have a cold. My voice is not perfect. I am dosed up quite severely at the moment, and I'm already sucking on a cough sweet, so hopefully I'll be able to make it through. I don't think I'm going to be able to do a watch along later on tonight. I'll say that now, and I'll say that with confidence because it's gotten worse. So apologies if I ever take a moment just to sort of not cough myself to death. In the meantime though, I'll have plenty of news primarily around Roman Reigns, but I'll also have news about the topics that you care about. So any questions that you have, drop them in the chat, and I will be sharing details and answering whatever question I can. Brandon, I do agree with you there, but it's still one of those credits that I have to my name. So let's talk Roman Reigns. The initial plan was for Roman Reigns to be defending against Cody Rhodes at some point soon, looking around SummerSlam time, and then Drew McIntyre further on at Clash at the Castle. The Drew McIntyre match is still planned. However, the change was made quite early in Cody's run, I'd say about 2 weeks after WrestleMania, that we were looking at Randy Orton at SummerSlam instead, and this is when they decided to pursue the championship unification for the tag team championships. At the time, knowing that he would be taking on Randy Orton, Roman Reigns saw an opportunity and started trying to get a storyline going with Matt Riddle and speaking to people backstage to say, this is a guy I want to wrestle. I want to wrestle Matt Riddle. That is still the plan, but it is no longer the plan for Money in the Bank, and it looks like the match has essentially been cancelled for pay-per-view. Instead, Roman Reigns is going to be protected from appearing basically anywhere for a while now. There is not much in Roman Reigns' schedule going forwards. Randy Orton is still there for SummerSlam. That is going to be our main event, but the planned main event of Money in the Bank was Roman Reigns versus Matt Riddle. I couldn't get confirmation of this, even though you guys know I've been talking about it for weeks, because they haven't been able to say it's definitely going to happen, and here it is not happening. Randy Orton, however, still very much set. Drew McIntyre set after that. Bobby Lashley was a favourite for Saudi Arabia. That does not look like it's going to happen at the moment, because he's going to be needed to fill what would have been the Cody Rhodes spot, so Bobby Lashley's been moved sideways. At this moment in time, Drew McIntyre is likely to be winning the Universal Championship at Clash at the Castle. That is in the main event, and that will be one championship. Roman Reigns would then hold the other, with the plan being for him to defend in the main event of WrestleMania. At the moment, you're expecting to hear The Rock's name, I'm sure. The favourite to beat Roman Reigns at WrestleMania this year is a returning Cody Rhodes. Now, there's a lot that could change in that time. There's a lot that could change. But right now, the WWE are madly in love with Cody Rhodes. Extremely happy to have the mainstream wrestling journalist support of the 5-star match. And are pushing for more Cody Rhodes upon his return. So Cody Rhodes at the moment, pardon me, is the favourite to defeat Roman Reigns for the WWE Championship. So, let's get to the questions now. I do apologise that I keep taking a moment. I'm not feeling well, but I'm trying my best. Before we jump into the questions, please do remember, if you're watching this on YouTube, hit like. The little thumbs up button can make a massive difference. We are currently at 1,180 subscribers. Still trying to get up to that 1.19. Every little helps, so if you haven't subscribed yet, please do consider it. Steve, before the show started, said, hello, Mr. Collique. Hope you're well, buddy. Not perfect, but I'm still in good spirits. My question is regarding Riddle's potential match against Roman. Will it replace Orton's match at SummerSlam, become a triple threat, or be on an episode of Smackdown? It is most likely to be on an episode of Smackdown at this point in time. A main event match, probably after Money in the Bank, leading into Randy Orton's return, which is supposed to be relatively soon. Randy Orton is taking planned time off on the basis of him having a limited date contract. He is permitted short bursts of time away, similar to Edge and similar before he left to Daniel Bryan. There is no plan for a triple threat. The WWE are dead set on Roman versus Randy one-on-one in the SummerSlam main event. Steve also asks, who are your favourite retro tag team? It depends what you mean by retro. I've got a soft spot for teams like the Head Shrinkers, teams like the Steiner Brothers, you know? If I'm going back, that's what I think of. Admittedly, I think that was the WrestleMania 9 tag match. But if you mean retro as in Attitude Era, I always had a soft spot for the Hardy Boys. Always did. Although, to be fair, I also quite like the Acolytes. Some good teams. Spider-Boss says, hi Tom, what was the reason for WWE taking Edge out of his stable? Edge was always planned to drop out of the stable. There are reports going out that it was going in a direction that he didn't agree with, so they dropped him. That is not the case. That is not the case at all. He put together the stable. He decided who would be wrestling in it. Damian Priest and Rhea Ripley's names came up immediately. If you recall, we talked about Rhea Ripley here right after the stable was launched because we already knew about Damian Priest. Now, the stable was always Edge's creation, but it was not long-term Edge. The whole plan was to put over new people with it, and he was putting over Damian Priest, was putting over Rhea Ripley, and now putting over Finn Balor. Because Edge is on a limited date contract, there was no intention for him to be back full-time. In fact, he's been there way longer than they expected him to be. Edge has been performing way above what is in his contract, so they have to give him some time off now in order to honour the terms of that contract. Initially, when Edge first signed his contract, we were told in a report from TalkSport that he was down for 5 wrestling matches and 13 appearances. That is clearly not accurate, and that is clearly not an accurate report as of right now. Brandon says hello. Hello, Brandon. Captain Buzzy says hello, everyone. Hello. Simon says, any news on Sasha? No update whatsoever. As I've said before, nobody has reported more in-depth and more information on Sasha Banks and Naomi than myself. The last update that I gave here is going to be the update that everyone else is going to get in a couple of weeks. Spider-Boss says, what is the plan for Roman Reigns? I believe I've explained that. Austin says, Tom, sound like you got a cold. You okay? Not doing great. I'm struggling in the mornings before I'm able to hydrate properly, and when I'm laid down, I'm really struggling at that point. But once I've sat up and once I've gone for a bit of a walk and I stretch my legs and I've got some warmth back into my body, I'm usually okay. I've had it for a week and a half now, and I would like it to go away. Instead, it's getting worse. Michael says, hi Tom. Hello Michael, how are you doing? And Noob says, hello Tom, how are you doing? Doing okay. Spirits are high. I don't think I'm going to be awake until 3 a.m. this morning. I've got to be honest. The Smackdown watch party, unlikely. Spider-Boss asking for an update on the returns of Sasha and Bayley. Sasha I've already mentioned. Bayley, I'm still waiting for her to actually reappear. She should be back in time for Money in the Bank. That is the information that I was given most recently, and that's what I've reported most recently. Apologies, couldn't find that one. Oh, this may not be a long show, guys. As regards Bayley, they're just waiting. My voice has got worse. They're just waiting for the right storyline and the right creative plan for her. I believe, to my knowledge, that creative plan would have included aligning with Sasha Banks against Naomi, who is moving into the bloodline, so we'll see how that plays out at this point. Captain Buzzy says, I just realised that it's been 8 years since Triple H cut the infamous My Friend Mark promo, and I guarantee you he would do it all over again. Steve says, sorry to hear you're still not feeling well, mate. Hope you're better soon. Me too, mate. Me too. I cross my fingers, but we'll see how it goes. At the moment, I'm hoping this is the worst of it. Spider-Boss is still surprised Rhea and Damien Priest betrayed Edge on Raw. Me too, even though knowing about Edge's plans and his pre-booked time off, it was still a pleasant surprise to actually see it happen. They've got us with a few good surprises with Edge recently, and I'm very happy about it. Simon says, there's a Matt Riddle match still happening on TV. Roman wants it to, Matt Riddle wants it to. Chances are they will get their way, though they of course didn't get their way when it came to pay-per-view. Michael says, I find what they're doing with this whole burial of Stephanie to be bizarre. I do as well. While the WWE and certain representatives have been negative about Stephanie, no one's been more negative than wrestling journalists who jumped on this to report it out of the wazoo, so I don't know what happened there. Thank you for the tip, Kings Andy. I will be sure to consider that. Boiling ginger's an interesting one. Dara, welcome. How you doing, mate? The user says, hi, mate. When would you say the WWE reality era started? I would say with the arrival of the Shield, to be honest with you. Even though we had the Hounds of Justice element to it, we saw a lessening of, this guy's big. He's great. For example, the Rybacks. We saw people like CM Punk get more prominence around 2012 because he was in the midst of a hell of a championship reign, and so on and so forth. There was a lot going on that felt more reality era around the arrival of the Shield. It's also when we stopped seeing characters like Tenzin. Even though I think he was still there in 2012, he was winding down. Noob says, hope you get better soon, Tom. Thank you, Noob. Appreciate that. King Xander says, over the last month or two, I've become aware of Meltzer. The 5-star rating is such a nonsense. I don't understand why this gets so much traction. Wrestling journalists and wrestling aggregators are enthralled by the opinion of Dave Meltzer. Enthralled. I don't know why. He's a wrestling journalist just like them. But they are obsessed with everything he says. Again, no idea why. Hopefully your surgery goes well, Austin. Hopefully so. Let me know. Simon says, Roman Reigns' title reign is a joke. Strip the belts. He's never ever there. Brock appeared more in his lackluster 2018-2019 Universal title run. Not necessarily true. Brock's first appearance in that particular title run after WrestleMania was in June against Samoa Joe. A great balls of fire. And we don't know that he's not going to defend the championship in June yet as regards Roman Reigns, so give it time. Probably he's not going to, but give it time. Justin also thinks he should be stripped. Austin says, I've seen the tease of Bobby versus Roman. The WWE are still planning to have the championship separate. Still planning to have them separate by Survivor Series, because Survivor Series is still planned to be champion versus champion, and if needs be, they will split the championships at the draft, but Drew McIntyre is still a favourite to take one of them away from him. Max says, hi Tom. WWE cannot freeze Sasha and Naomi contracts because they are suspended without pay, but can they release them so they have 90 days no compete? They can do pretty much anything. It's the WWE. If they want to fire them, they can fire them. If they can suspend them without pay, they can suspend them without pay. If they want to freeze them, which is what suspension without pay is, they can do that as well. Brandon says Reigns is scheduled to keep at least one of the titles till Mania. That seems to be the case at the moment, yes. That is what the WWE are currently planning and currently discussing, with the idea that Cody Rhodes will be the one to take it at WrestleMania. Now, of course, there are non-stop rumours, it's going to be The Rock at WrestleMania, but there also was this time, last year, and the year before that. Simon says he's not defended the title for 3 months. The guy will have nothing to fight for. Austin was always there full-time when he was a WWF champion back in the day. That was 22 years ago. 22 years is a big change. Austin also never held the belt for very long. Brandon says, is Edge going to go to AJ for help whenever he returns, or is AJ moving on? My expectation is that AJ will be moving on at this point. I don't necessarily know what to. I'm hoping back to SmackDown, where he's the big deal that he always used to be. If you're currently watching on YouTube, please do remember to hit the like button. That little thumbs up can make a massive difference. And subscribe if you haven't already. Spider-Boss says, any chance that Rhea could beat Bianca at Money in the Bank? At the moment, no. But I do think Rhea will get another opportunity relatively soon, and Bianca Belair may not be long for the championship once again. Kervin, welcome, says, so Roman Reigns is out of Money in the Bank. One problem, what is going to be the main event for Money in the Bank? Chances are at this point, the men's Money in the Bank ladder match will be the main event of that show. Steve says, Edge versus Finn Balor at SummerSlam, a purple demon would be interesting. I would expect that to be the match, yes, but Edge may have to work his way through Damian Priest first. Edge versus Damian Priest is definitely in the planning at the moment. Spider-Boss is saying, what is the plan for AJ Styles now that Edge took time off? I'm not sure, but he is a face now. He may be going up against someone like Seth Rollins, for example. There are spots available, though. Bobby Lashley, for example, looks like he may be going up against Austin Theory. We also have the return of John Cena to factor in. So suddenly, out of nowhere, WWE Raw might be a bit face-heavy. Give me AJ versus Kevin Owens for a couple of months. I'll be a happy boy. King Xander says, yeah, drinking sugary drinks ain't going to help that cold cough. Which is why I have water. I have water. Okay? Yes, a little bit of Lucozade. It's a bit sugary. But I also have water to balance it out. I wouldn't worry that much. Kervin asks, what was the reason Becky Lynch challenged for the 24/7 title? It's actually really simple. We've been discussing for a while here that Becky Lynch wanted to give back, wanted to wrestle people lower down the card, and wanted to help elevate some of the other women. She was able to pick up a loss to Dana Brooke. She's very happy about that. Becky Lynch, as reported here and only here, was planning to take a lot of losses after losing the Women's Championship. Jermaine says, hi Tom, hope you get better mate, and thanks for the Edge news. No worries man, no worries, and thank you kindly for the well wishes. Simon says, I personally love the Finn Balor heel turn, taking over the Judgment Day even though it had a lot of heat. It did have a lot of heat, that is a good thing. That is a very good thing. And also I feel that this particular heel turn felt very Finn Balor in NXT, which is something they've been trying to recapture. And now that they've actually succeeded in doing that, I'm very excited to see where it goes next. Hector, welcome, says, happy Friday, Tom. Opinions on Will Ospreay in the Aussie Open showing up on Dynamite? Well, it's interesting. Will Ospreay, always expected, would turn up on Dynamite eventually. He's one of those that's not necessarily got links to the Elite, but he's still a very popular person that they want to bring in. He's mostly skated above any controversies quite cleanly compared to many other of his peers. So him turning up there, he's just going to add a little more excitement to Dynamite. Noob, I'm glad you're enjoying Stranger Things. I'm still waiting for July 1st to finish off Stranger Things. I have another TV show that I'll be finishing off over the next few days. Michael Winston, welcome. Says, what are the plans for Bobby Lashley? It looks like briefly he's going to be in the United States Championship picture, but not for very long. They're not sure with Bobby Lashley at the moment. They want him to be ready for Roman. The most likely opportunity he's going to have is in 4 months in Saudi Arabia. My suspicion is that Bobby Lashley will be moving to SmackDown. Spider-Boss says, qualifying matches for Money in the Bank tonight, Drew versus Sheamus, and Lacey versus Xia Li, and Ricochet versus Gunther for the Intercontinental Championship. SmackDown looks good. I hope a surprise return. Me too. I very much am hoping for a surprise return as well. I think you all know who I want to see return, and I think it's about time it actually happened. Dimitar says, wrestling news always tends to be negative. Just look at what's happened/happening to Tony, Sasha, Naomi, and others. Wrestling news does always tend to be negative. But to be fair, when it comes to wrestling news, our job is to report everything. And while the WWE will report the positives themselves because they want to put themselves over, we are left to report the bad stuff. We have no choice in that. Simon says, is a men's Money in the Bank winner going to cash in on Drew or Roman in your opinion? I would say Roman. Having Drew McIntyre, for example, win and then cash in for Clash at the Castle is a... Sorry, one sec. Nope. Still one more. Still two more. Is a great way for Drew to cash in, guarantee himself the match at Clash at the Castle, and then only take one championship. We haven't worked out yet whether the Money in the Bank briefcase will give you both championships or just the one, or if Roman would potentially lose both and then Heyman would argue one back to him. The user says, personally I'd say the reality era started at WrestleMania 30 or around that 2014 time, so not long after what I said. Johnny Mendez, welcome to Hi Tom, how are you doing? Doing okay, thank you. Hopefully you're good as well. My question is, I've seen people say Becky and Seth are possibly moving to Smackdown in the draft. Have you heard anything about this? Haven't heard a thing. As far as I know, Becky Lynch and Seth Rollins are going to be at the top of WWE Raw for many years to come. They were moved there to be that top tier, as it were, and elevate the people around them. No plans, to my knowledge, to move them to Smackdown at this point. Austin's very excited for Walter Gunter. I think Gunter's winning the championship tonight. Bailey says the reason Meltzer gets too much attention is the same reason Bill Apter used to get as well. Sheer longevity more than quality of coverage. To be fair, for the longest time it was the Wrestling Observer and it was the PW Torch. That was it. That was literally everything that you could have for backstage wrestling news. That was the only sources of it, only sources of a fair bit of gossip. Nowadays, everybody's got a little bit of gossip to share, and as you know, if you come here, there is plenty of news that doesn't make headlines until days, weeks, months later when someone else reports it. So longevity no longer really a factor. Sid Welcome says, what are some of the ways that WWE or AEW uses wrestling journalists to secretly advance their own narratives? How common is it, and are the journalists aware when/if it is happening? That is a great question, Sid. Thank you kindly. So, as a wrestling journalist, I have at times been approached in bad faith. So I've been given information knowing that that is bad information, or knowing that that is the new kayfabe. Now, here's a fun little thing that I like to talk about. Kayfabe is not dead. Wrestling journalists are now kayfabe. Okay? For example, MVP recently came out and said, because he's in the news recently about having an altercation with Jericho, saying that, oh, the dirt sheets got it, but they didn't get the details. He didn't furnish any further details, he didn't make it clear, but that story has been kayfabed. So the report from Wrestling Observer is a kayfabe report. There were also times, I'll say WrestleMania 34, right after Charlotte beat Asuka and Ronda Rousey made her debut, Dave Meltzer was fed the information, Charlotte versus Ronda Rousey will main event next year's WrestleMania, and he reported it. He reported that. That was a litmus test by the WWE to see if people would back it. Now, Becky Lynch worked her way into that, but the plan was for her to take on Asuka, with Asuka being the face for the SmackDown Women's Championship that year at WrestleMania. She worked her way into the main event, and ultimately Asuka's the one who lost out, but Becky Lynch worked her way into it. So the new kayfabe is very much wrestling journalists, and you'll find that a lot of the most trusted wrestling journalists, and this is AEW in particular, are intentionally fed information to build a buzz. If you've been a long-term follower of this channel, you'll know that the news about CM Punk negotiating a deal with AEW was here long before it was anywhere else. But when someone else reported it, it was just at the right time for AEW to kick things into gear. It guaranteed them stronger ratings in the weeks that came, and it meant that they had a surprise without actually having a surprise, because they hadn't said anything, but a wrestling journalist had. A wrestling journalist that they tell all of their wrestlers to follow. That information was leaked. Hector says, Tom, I'd assume that WWE knew Roman would be missing all these pay-per-views prior to the decision of making him unified champ. They did not. He had not signed a limited day contract at that time, and ultimately, until about a week ago, the plan was still to have him against Matt Riddle at Money in the Bank. They are making this up as they go along, and it's very awkward at times. Simon says, what's your opinion, Tom, on Tony, Mia, Jeff shooting on their WWE exits this past week in interviews? I think it's inevitable. WWE wrestlers who leave, go to AEW, will always end up on Talk is Jericho, at least for a brief period. So it's not a surprise to me at all when it eventually happens. I feel it's catharsis for them as much as anything. I don't begrudge them telling their story. Ultimately, there's a lot of interesting stuff to tell. Johnny Crow says, who do you think will win the Money in the Bank matches? Cody was the shoe-in. Cody was the one. I'm feeling Matt Riddle's got a much stronger chance now than he did. As regards to women, it's really hard to work out a specific name. I'd be looking at someone like Shayna Baszler, maybe even Sonya Deville. I'd like Sonya Deville to be the one. Jermaine says, I believe they're saving Roman Reigns for the stadium shows in Saudi Arabia. If you remember, Money in the Bank was a stadium, but it got switched. I do remember. I've discussed that one, and it does seem like that was the main reason that match is no longer happening. Michael says, do you think New Japan will be continuing to work with AEW after Forbidden Door? Seems like they will to me. They will. There is a strong working partnership there at the moment, and I'm waiting to see how that is used and how that is developed. But the plan is very much to continue working together in the near future. Sean says, hello Tom. Your thoughts on Judgment Day, turning on Edge, and the Women's 4-Way? The Women's 4-Way was fun. I like who the winner was. I like where they're going with that. I'm just very happy with that whole situation. And Bianca Belair's reign so far has been very, very good. As regards to turn on Judgment Day, I also really like that. Before Judgment Day got stale, it got changed up, and it's still plenty interesting. I'm excited to see where they go. I'm excited to see how Finn Balor leads this particular stable. I'm just excited in general. Austin says, Cena versus Theory, US title maybe. There is certainly discussions of that being the SummerSlam match. We're still early days for that, but I wouldn't be unhappy about it. Simon says, should we all take bets on when Roman next decides to show up? I would imagine that will be the Smackdown after Money in the Bank. And I'd imagine that will be when the Matt Riddle match will be. Hypnosis Bro, welcome, says, what was your reaction to the Becky Lynch 24/7 segment on Raw? Obviously Twitter lost it, but what was your reaction? I enjoyed it. I knew this was coming. This is Becky giving back. So many people get annoyed at the Four Horsewomen for taking the limelight and all that, but they get annoyed as well when they give back. Becky Lynch was just giving back. Also says, will Ronda be at Money in the Bank, or will she face Natalya on SmackDown instead? It looks like Ronda Rousey versus Natalya will be a Money in the Bank match rather than a standard SmackDown match. After all, they need to fill time on that show now. Simon says, Liv, Alexa, Riot Bliss, future women's tag team champions in your opinion? No, not as of yet. I still believe that Alexa will be reuniting with Nikki Cross and Doudrop sooner rather than later, though Liv Morgan is now available, so there's no reason not to have that happen. Dimitar says, Twitter always loses it when a top woman gets near to that division/title. It's not like Becky was chasing the champ, it was a set of her story with Asuka. Very true, and to be fair, it did more good for Dana Brooke than anything Dana Brooke's done for a while now. Johnny says, I also know that the world title is getting separated again. Sorry if I should know this, but does that also go for the tag titles? The tag titles will be getting separated before Survivor Series as well. It's just a case of getting to it. Austin says, could we get Shayna in a qualifying match? Likely, yes. I believe Shayna's going to be in that Money in the Bank ladder match. They need more women to be able to do so. Simon says, Meltzer and Cultaholic Wrestling. Cultaholic Wrestling did not. Reported Riddle versus Reigns to happen on TV instead. Cultaholic Wrestling reported what Meltzer reported. They are just re-reporting and aggregating that information. Jared says, just joined Tom, what did I miss? Well, firstly, I'm still feeling pretty heavily under the weather. I do apologise to everyone that I've not really been able to perform to my standards on this one. I will not be doing a watch along for SmackDown. I've been thinking during the stream, and I'm not good. I'm just not good, guys. So I'm going to skip it this week. Otherwise, though, I'm alright. I've been speaking about the plans for the next champions from Roman Reigns. Drew McIntyre is still very much in the conversation for Clash at the Castle, but there is a plan at the moment that would involve Cody Rhodes returning at the Royal Rumble, challenging Roman Reigns at WrestleMania, and defeating him for the WWE Championship. Dimitar says, does that mean they move Ronda instead? I've been saying for a while, I suspect Ronda's going to move to Raw. That's always been my personal opinion. Jay Quick says, is this the night Ricochet gets squashed by Volta? Yep. Yes, it is. They may try and delay, as is the WWE standard tactic, but from what I can tell, there's not much heat behind Ricochet's championship run. The actual supposed push was just a case of they needed to get the championship off Sami Zayn so that Johnny Knoxville could beat him at WrestleMania. Volta is going to take the championship and he's going to hold it for a while. There is a lot of excitement about Volta backstage, as I've said many times in the past, and as Fightful Select are now reporting several weeks later. Dimitar says, if Becky Ronda is still the plan, it is indeed still the plan for WrestleMania. Sean says, is it true Edge didn't want Judgment Day to be supernatural, which is why he was removed from the group? Yes, it is true that Edge didn't want Judgment Day to be supernatural. No, that's not why he was removed from the group. He was always going to be removed from the group because he works a limited day contract and the faction still needed to be on TV. The discussion about it being supernatural was months ago, and the WWE stuck to what Edge wanted until it is now in the hands of Finn. Hypnosis Bro says, is the Becky Asuka feud going to end in a qualifying match to go to Money in the Bank, or are they going to both be in the ladder match? Either one could happen. I suspect we'll get a qualifying match myself, and Becky will have the night off for the actual show, but we'll wait and see what actually happens. The WWE may need the star power. They haven't really decided, but now that Roman Reigns isn't featured, you can guarantee Seth and Becky will be, especially with Cody not there as well. Noob says, what are your thoughts on Asuka saying that she may not win every time on this week's Raw Talk? I know everyone doesn't like her character in promos, but I enjoy her feud with Becky. A lot of people do like her character in promos. Not everyone does, certainly, but it's not a case that everyone doesn't like it. Asuka doesn't win every time. Nobody should win every time. I don't believe in these long undefeated streaks that certain individuals get. I'm happy with someone who has a couple of bad days every now and then. I'm happy with a bit more even booking, not necessarily 50-50. Becky Lynch should always beat Dana Brooke, but I like where they're headed. I like what they're doing with Asuka. The crowd likes what they're doing with Asuka, and I'm excited to see what comes next. Joey says, hey Tom, do you know why Edge is removed from Judgment Day? Was it because of creative differences? No, it was just because his time on his contract is limited and he needed to get some time off on his calendar. Simon says, a hashtag crew member on Twitter tonight is saying they are taking a We Want Sasha sign to Smackdown to try to get it to appear on TV. It'll probably appear on TV then. Simon says, any news on the MJF return to AWTV? Still taking his time, still kayfabe, still at work. Jermaine says, I'd rather see John Cena come back, win the US title, than have the US Open Challenge put over young talent like Braun Breaker, Carmelo Hayes, and etc. I like where you're going with that, though I wouldn't necessarily like it to be a long-term thing. I'd like to see Cena versus Bobby Lashley, for example. I think that would be good. But I'd prefer to see Cena lose to Austin Theory. And I'd prefer to see Braun Breaker versus Austin Theory, for example. That would work for me. Spider-Boss says, who do you see as the guy that can beat Theory for the US title? I still think Ali's in with a shot here, but I suspect this is going to end up being a Kevin Owens call-up sort of element. That someone like Braun Breaker will get called up, beat Austin Theory immediately and take their championship there, but that will be around Saudi Arabia time. Simon says, do you still see Sasha in the women's Money in the Bank ladder match? No, I never particularly saw Sasha in the match. I know that the plan is to have her return around the time of that pay-per-view, but it may not be beforehand. They may choose to bring her back afterwards and not have her in that match. Spider-Boss says, is Theory returning for a short feud? Sorry, is Cena returning for a short feud with Theory? Possibly. I know Cena is returning. I don't know what the plans are yet. I know a lot of people are assuming it's Austin Theory, and that's probably the most likely. Spider-Boss says, is Rhea beating Bianca at Money in the Bank, or Bianca still retains? Bianca still retains at this point in time, from what I can tell. Hector says, Tom, did you see Meltzer reported that Bray Wyatt was released by WWE last year for things that I probably shouldn't talk about because it could open a can of worms? Any idea where he's going with this? I feel like this is something to get views, in my opinion. I don't think you're wrong there, Hector. I don't. What he's done there is reported nothing in an exciting way. It's very Tony Khan, you know. Simon says, what's your opinion on AEW's new IC type Mid-Atlantic title, championship mid-card belt they have? I don't think you need that many championships if you have good storytelling. I think feuds don't necessarily need belts, and belts are basically just props. So I have questions. I don't mind the idea of having quite a few championships, but if we're having a lot of different championships, we should have a lot of separate divisions as well. Spider-Boss says, would be fun seeing Charlotte putting over the SmackDown women's division. Asking you will receive. Jared says, Tom, is Edge getting in a program with Finn Balor, and is he taking a time off prior to that? Yes, and yes. Jermaine Presley says, I can see Judgment Day moving to SmackDown, the Bloodline moving to Raw in the draft. If that happens, I'm confused as to who the top people will be on SmackDown, Because if you take Roman away from that show, Roman and the Usos, you're not left with that many top name talents. Now I do think Bobby Lashley will move across. I do think maybe Kevin Owens will move across. But I'm still not sure who the champion would be on that side. That said, Drew McIntyre is right there. Joey says, why did Apollo go back to NXT? Because it was that or quit. Essentially, he got the Mandy Rose treatment. He was told, we have nothing for you. We're going to send you back to NXT because if we can't find something for you soon, we're probably just going to fire you. Jared says, when is the next gaming stream? That is still planned for this Sunday. We will be continuing on Last of Us Part 2. It is day 2 in Seattle. After the embarrassment of my attempts at stealth last week, this particular section will at least not involve that much of it. Michael says, we were able to meet with your accountants today since you're sick. That is not planned for today, that is planned for Monday. Hopefully, I'll be fine for then, though it may take a little bit longer now. But yes, Michael, my plan is still to meet with the accountants on Monday. And then I have a meeting with my bank planned on Tuesday to get things rolling. So fingers crossed everything will be set and confirmed in time for Money in the Bank and definitely in time for SummerSlam. SummerSlam is going to be an earner. It's going to be a hell of an earner. So I really want it to all be in place. Spider Boss says, any real chance of Naomi joining the Bloodline? Not as much anymore, but certainly some interest is still there. Christoph says, Tom, get well soon, mate. Thank you, Christoph. I'll do my best. Fingers crossed it all works out. Dominic Perez says, hi, Tom. Just came on. Are they going to take one of the titles off Roman? Hope he gets better. Thank you. Thanks, everyone, for the well wishes. It does mean a lot to me. I appreciate it. Yes, they are planning to take one of the championships away from Roman before Survivor Series. The way that they're planning to do it could mean that Roman Reigns goes to Raw. Simon says, Dave Meltzer reported in The Observer today that it's going to be Cole versus Hangman versus Okada for the IWGP World Heavyweight Championship in a triple threat match at Forbidden Door. Well, in which case, Okada's going to win. I don't think Forbidden Door is going to be one of those unpredictable shows, but I still think it'll be a great wrestling show, and I'll definitely be tuning in for it. And I'd like Jay White to be involved in that one, just make it a fatal four-way. Why not? Dimitar says either Ronda exchanges her title with the Raw champ or she moves there without a belt. I've always thought Becky versus Ronda will be a title match. I'm confident Becky versus Ronda will be a title match. I suspect it'll be for the Raw Women's Championship. I suspect that Ronda will beat Bianca Belair for it around October, December time. And that Becky Lynch will find a way to get involved in that. I suspect this year's Money in the Bank ladder match winner will be cashing in on Ronda. I'm hoping it'll be Shayna. And that will take the championship away from Ronda, allowing potentially for a Survivor Series match between the two, which Ronda could then win. Dara says, I kind of want to end the whole Raw versus Smackdown thing for Survivor Series because of the unified titles. We are getting very close to having to do that. Very close to having to do that. But from my understanding, the championships will not be unified much longer. That said, as I've mentioned, they are making this up as they go along, so there's just no guarantee of that. Spider-Boss says, about Roman at Money in the Bank, WWE needs Sasha. WWE are more likely to call on Seth and Becky, as they are considered the top names of Raw and the top names after Roman. Hypnosis Bro says, I saw that Becky and Seth are on the poster of Money in the Bank. I guess this means both are guaranteed to be on the show. Not guaranteed per se. The posters are usually made up well in advance and plans do change, as we know, but I'm confident they'll both be there. Jared says, haven't heard you correctly, Tom. Are there plans to take the US belt off of Theory? There are plans for every single championship. It really depends when they move the championship. I suspect Austin Theory will be the champion for a while yet. Sean says, Alexa was on WWE Deutschland Instagram Live. Said that Rhea is someone she wants to face one-on-one. He praised Rhea by saying super talented and a freaking star. Pardon me. Also asked about teaming with Liv and said she would team with her and called her super talented. Also asked if she could pick her MMC partner, mixed match challenge partner. She said The Miz, unless it's teaming with Maurice. Then she would pick Theory. I think she'd be guaranteed a very good run with those names. Spider-Boss says, since Roman is working on limited dates, I would love to see Sasha Banks back. SmackDown Women's Division needs her. I think a lot of people would want to see Sasha Banks back regardless of what anyone else is doing. Sean says, I don't think Rock versus Roman needs a title. No, but I do think the main event needs Roman. And the main event needs a championship. Sean says, will Liv Morgan be a candidate to win the Women's Rumble next year? A candidate, yes. Strong likelihood, not so much, though I do suspect she'll be moving to Smackdown, where the winner is likely to be. Austin just got the game The Quarry. I've not seen much of it, but I've seen a lot of sponsored content around it. Oh, I'm choking. Hypnosis Pro says, I can see a horsewoman winning the briefcase this year. Can also see Edge/Beth costing Rhea the match and winning the bank to protect her from losing, and to have the rematch at Clash. That could be fun. Edge and Beth Phoenix versus Finn Balor and Rhea Ripley, with Damian Priest at ringside. That could be fun. Joey says, who is LA Knight going to introduce in his stable tonight? Not sure. The most likely scenario for me is Mansoor. Jared says, Tom, any idea of Bobby raising a replica belt at the end of his pay-per-view match? Yeah, he wants the championships. I can't sit here and say that was scripted. I'm going to be completely honest with you guys. Bobby Lashley's a bit of a law unto himself recently. He wants the championship back. He wants that championship back, and he's coming for it. He just hasn't been told when, and he's trying to speed up the process. Michael believes Apollo was good as Intercontinental Champion. I think he did well. It's a shame that they've had nothing for him. Austin says, I heard there's more releases coming. There are always more releases coming, but the WWE right now are very happy with the roster size that they have, and in fact are a little bit eager to get some more names over on SmackDown. Spider-Boss says, can Bayley return as Asuka did? Yes, she can. Sid says, do you think AEW is going to phase out the TNT title, replace it with this Mid-Atlantic title? Seems strange to name a title after a cable television network in the first place. It is a little bit strange, especially when there's no guarantee you're going to be on that network going forwards. So maybe they need to change the name of the title, but I don't see them phasing it out. I see them using both. They have a very large roster. They need to give them something to fight for. Spider-Boss says, if Ronda is moving to Raw in the draft, Sasha and Charlotte will be the top women of the Blue Brand. Yes. Yep, that's correct. Nikon says, any call-ups coming? A few, yes, though it's more likely to be around SummerSlam time that we see, for example, Bron Breakker and Io Shirai get called up. I think it's long overdue for both of them. Nelson says, I hope Roman keeps the Universal title longer. I want and hope for a very long reign. He can lose or relinquish the WWE title. The Universal Championship seems like the more likely one to be lost sooner at the moment. Hector says, with Forbidden Door being an AEW pay-per-view technically, how will they decide the booking decision with both AEW and New Japan wanting their wrestlers to go over? Tony Khan and Gedo will sit down and work out the logistics and try and come up with a plan that makes everyone happy. They will not overall succeed. Oh, pardon me guys, apologies, I'm still a little bit under the weather. Spider-Boss says, hard to believe that Corbin still being the last guy that pinned Roman. Indeed, and they need to highlight that more, because Corbin doesn't have that much more going for him, and that's reason to get into a top level feud. Justin says, do you think there's any chance we get Becky versus Asuka at Money in the Bank and they aren't in the Money in the Bank match? I found that unlikely. If they're going to have a lot of women's matches, and it looks like they're going to have 3, they can't afford to have more, because it'll just mean they've got no one on the men's side. Sean says, SK and Wrestle Talk are saying there was an injury scare involving Gigi Dolan in an NXT taping. I would love to see that footage of that. Simon says, I personally think the women's Money in the Bank ladder match should be Sasha, Naomi, Alexa, Liv, Asuka, Becky, Shayna, Aaliyah. Sasha, Naomi will add star power. They definitely would add star power. That's true. That's not necessarily meaning that the WWE want them in the match or that they'll be available for it. Alyssa, welcome, says Liv Morgan deserves to win Money in the Bank. I would not be unhappy with that as a situation. Joey says there was a report that more NXT talent could be getting released. Do you think it will happen soon? Not necessarily soon per se. I think that the WWE are regularly looking at the NXT roster and deciding to trim the fat, as they would refer to it. There's no need for it at the moment, but with people coming down from the main roster, there is a fight in 2.0 right now for legitimacy and for importance. Simon says, what SummerSlam matches do you see potentially for Sasha and Naomi upon their return in a few weeks? I'm not sure. I don't necessarily think they're going to be on the SummerSlam card unless they can find something interesting or unless there is something going on in the Tag Team Championships. But ultimately, the WWE doesn't really want them in the Tag Team Championship division at the moment, so they may not be involved. Yes, Jared, gaming streams, Colihue Gaming, will be on Sunday, 1pm UK time, that is 8am Eastern time. Spider-Boss says, if a woman of Smackdown wins the women's Money in the Bank ladder match, it's hard to pick one since WWE doesn't give much attention. You say that, but they've been featured quite strongly over the last few weeks. Raquel Rodriguez has been pushed. Shayna Baszler had at least a moment with Ronda Rousey, and I do think there is more coming with her. Steve says, any updates on Zoe Stark? She's been out of an injury for a while now. Yet the WWE are particularly worried. She's doing well in her rehabilitation, but the injury is taking a little longer to come back from than expected. They're not entirely sure of creative plans for her when she returns, but NXT and the women's division are going pretty strong at the moment. Sean says, Jim Cornette said, at which point I don't want to read, but here we go. Liv is too girly to be a wrestler. Jim isn't the brightest crayon in the box. He's not. Have you ever actually interviewed or spoken to Liv Morgan? She ain't girly. She is not girly. Alyssa says, what is Bayley, heel or babyface? At the moment, she is a heel. Her affiliation has not been changed. Her alignment is still heel, but I do think the fans have an opportunity to turn her face upon her return. Simon says, who do you see winning the triple threat ladder match on AEW Dynamite for the tag team titles on Wednesday? Jurassic Express, Hardys or Young Bucks? I think the Jurassic Express will retain, and I don't think the Hardys should be in a ladder match so soon after just everything. They're having a rough time of it. Joey says, who is Riddick Moss going to feud with next? Hard to say. There's not really a lineup set up in the SmackDown divisions at the moment. I think Moss versus Gunter is in the offing. We'll see how that plays out. Sean says, since Roxanne won the breakout tournament, will she beat Mandy? Also, do you think there could be a jealousy storyline which would turn Cora heel? Both of those are possible. I think Roxanne is most likely to beat Mandy Rose, and then Toxic Attraction will get the call up around SummerSlam time. I think that's the most likely scenario. Simon says, which tag team do you see beating the Usos for one of the Raw, SmackDown Tag Team Championship belts or titles? The Street Profits have as good a chance as anyone, and I do feel it's either going to be them or RK Bro regaining the championships. Hector says, yesterday WWE tweeted, who will dethrone Roman? In typical Kevin Owens fashion, he tweeted a picture of Shanky. Imagine a world in which that would happen, dancing for everyone. It would be a confusing world, but I don't think anyone would be angry about it. Simon says, my pick for Money in the Bank is Owens and Zayn. Men, Sasha and Liv for women. You do have to pick one pick for Money in the Bank. Steve says, can you see Sami Zayn babyface turn at the end of the Bloodline storyline? I'd quite like Sami to enter Money in the Bank to win the briefcase and protect Roman. Now, this was pitched maybe by yourself in a show recently, and I was very excited by the prospect of exactly that. I'd be very happy with that, and I think it would naturally turn Sami babyface, so I'm all for it. Jared says, is there any chance you free your schedule to make a stream after Sunday? What stream after Sunday are you referring to, Jared? Austin says, is there 6 or 8 in the ladder match? At the moment, there is still a plan for 8 in the men's, but it looks like it's going to be 6 for the women's. Simon says, do you see Charlotte in the women's Money in the Bank ladder match? Yes, I do. Noob says, Jim Cornette even said a lot of Joshi wrestlers schoolgirls, and a lot of fans are very offended by that. Yeah, because it's bullshit. Jim Cornette is talking bullshit. Alyssa says, what do you think of a double turn Bayley and Ronda Rousey? You think they need a turn into WrestleMania 39? Ronda Rousey will be a heel going into WrestleMania 39. Her and Becky will have a swap. Basically, they'll just stop fighting it and let the fans pick their favourite. Spider-Boss says, any chance of Jurassic Express retaining? Yes, there is a strong chance of Jurassic Express retaining. Simon says, really excited for the Thunder Rosa versus Toni Storm AEW Women's Championship feud. It will certainly get Thunder Rosa and Toni Storm a lot more airtime, though it's a little disappointing. So many women have joined the company recently and are not getting a lot of attention. Joey says, who do you think will be in the Money in the Bank men's ladder match? I suspect we'll get a collection of people: Drew McIntyre, Bobby Lashley, Finn Balor, etc. I think there'll be a lot of good options there. Simon says, I really think the women's Money in the Bank ladder match needs Sasha, Naomi, Charlotte star drawing power. Yes, that also includes Becky Lynch, by the way. There'll be quite a number of different draws there. Bailey says, strictly on talent, who's the most underutilized performer on the main roster? Chad Gable. No question. Chad Gable. Jared, I'm happy to hear you enjoy the gaming streams. That is the slot for it, but by all means, you could always watch it later. You could always watch it later and catch up. And that is my regular streaming schedule, and having a regular streaming schedule will be a big help in growth. It's also the best slot for me, so that's the slot I'm going to be using. Sean says, why do I think Max Dupree's first client will be Mace? Mansoor seems more likely at the moment, though who can tell? We'll find out tonight. John says, is it possible they call up Bron Breakker and he goes right after Roman? Yes, and I'd very much like that. And Spider-Boss says, what is next for AJ Styles now that Edge took time off? Edge may himself take some time off, or it may be that Edge goes up against a Kevin Owens, a Seth Rollins, or in fact a John Cena. We've been streaming for more than 50 minutes now, and I've got to be honest, my throat is knackered. It's knackered. So I'm going to call it there. I'm not going to be doing a SmackDown watch party tonight. Just to be clear, I'm not going to be doing a SmackDown watch party because I'm just not feeling up to it. I'm going to rest up, spend my weekend, instead of going out in the sun, just resting and recuperating, so that hopefully I'm fit and flying on Monday for my meeting with the accountant. There may be more overall content over next week as I have time off, but I'll wait and see how that plays out. Alyssa says, should Bray Wyatt come back? WWE very much miss him right now. Very little interest in WWE making that happen. Hector says, the belief is that Edge wants to put more people over. Does that indicate Balor is going over at SummerSlam if that's when the match happens? Hard to tell. Edge wants to put people over. WWE want him to win. John says, will there be a Raw watch party this week? I was hoping to do that. Very much depends on the... Very much depends on my throat. So hopefully, yes. Michael says, feel better. Thank you, Michael. Steve says, great stream, Tom. Get yourself better, mate. Thank you, guys. I cannot quite describe how much worse my throat is on stream because I've got all the lights, there's a lot of heat, and it's very dry in the room because of fans of the PC and the TV and everything. So I'm proud of myself for chugging through that one, but I've got to rest up now. Thanks everyone for your time, for hitting like, for hitting subscribe, for continuing the growth of the channel. I do apologise we are not doing a show, a watch party, but I will rest up and I'll be back fit and firing till later. Yeah, a good plan, Robs. Thanks for dropping in even regardless. So in the meantime, thank you everyone. I've been Tom Collier. You've been fantastic. I'll see you all very soon.